Hey, welcome everyone to From the Ground Up. We are a CEO official mag sponsored podcast. We're also sponsored by Grit Daily. We talk to entrepreneurs about what they're doing in the world. And the idea is hopefully that entrepreneurs out there watching the show, we have a nice audience of them. They get a good idea on how they can improve their business and whether it's marketing, whether it's innovation at their company, that sort of thing. Today, we're joined by Cris Beswick over in the UK, who is a strategic advisor for companies of all kinds. Cris, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. I know it's a little bit later your time, but hey, like you said, you have calls with the US later on tonight, so
That's right.
So it's perfectly okay. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about what you do. Tell us about your background.
Sure. So, my name is Cris Beswick. I'm an ex-CEO. I say ex-entrepreneur, but I don't think you're ever an ex-entrepreneur. I think that's in your DNA, right? It's in your blood. So I'm now an investor, and predominantly as you said in your great intro, I'm a strategic advisor to predominantly big companies, but the lessons that I teach are relevant for all companies. But I'm a strategic advisor on innovation and innovation-led growth, primarily culture. I'm really known for my last book, Building a Culture of Innovation.
Oh, very good. Well, you've advised C-suite leaders all over different continents and on innovation strategies. You said, and what's like perhaps the most dangerous myth about innovation that costs all these companies and organizations billions of dollars these days?
Do you know what? There's a few. When it comes to strategy, I think the biggest myth is, look, the word disruption is everywhere. We all know and we all feel disruption and the effects of things that are disruptive, whether we're guys like you and I, just consumers, regular guys, or whether we're the CEOs of huge global organizations. But one of the biggest challenges with innovation is what I see is a lot of organizations thinking that they're already doing innovation, but they're not seeing results. They're not seeing the needle shift. Therefore, they must have to try and do something radical or disruptive. And the reality is, I've been doing this for a long time now. There are very, very, very few companies on the planet that have genuinely done something disruptive. I mean, think about it, right? And if the listeners think about it, how many companies can we all name that have genuinely disrupted industries and markets? Half a dozen, a dozen? The Googles of the world, Apple, arguably, Tesla, Meta. But we're not seeing companies disrupt whole sectors and industries on a weekly, monthly, or even a yearly basis. Yeah. So the pursuit of disruption, I think, is really dangerous, and it misses the sweet spot, which is somewhere in between continuous improvement and being completely radical. That for me is costing companies a huge amount of money.
Oh, man. So what are some of the key things, I suppose, that you advise organizations in order to get that sweet spot? Like, so I guess what's your philosophy on getting companies to describe the sweet spot again for me? Just so that we get it right.
I call the sweet spot differentiated innovation, right? So everyone will have heard the term continuous improvement. That, by any other name, is incremental innovation, small changes, constant tweaks, hundreds of things like that happening in an organization every year. That in itself doesn't shift the needle. That doesn't really propel organizations forward and drive growth. But it's the price of entry. In every organization, things need to be tweaked and modified and things need to get better. But right at the other end of the scale is this pursuit of being radical and disruptive. And for 99% of organizations, that will never happen. What organizations miss is the ground in the middle, the really fruitful ground, which I call differentiated innovation. And differentiated innovation is solving problems and capitalizing on opportunities that are bigger than continuous improvement, but not too big that they're almost unattainable. So think, if we talk about being radical and disruptive through the lens of companies wanting to find unicorns and billion-dollar ideas, and the holy grail of 10x as a return on investment, think 2, 3, 4, 5x. So problems and opportunities that are still significant enough, but they're not unattainable. Now, if you can solve those, you can build the repeatable capability to solve those. And that's the sweet spot that most organizations miss.
Well, okay. So let's say that a traditional industry leader realizes that they're going to be disrupted. You have a 90-day playbook for that. How does what you're just talking about, finding that sweet spot, how's that related to the 90-day playbook? And what is the 90-day playbook that could help save that organization that feels like they may be disrupted soon enough?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is if an organization is genuinely going to be disrupted within 90 days, that's a really, really tough challenge to solve, right?
You're almost too late.
How do you, and for many organizations, it's too late. How do you save an organization in 3 months? But the reality is, what you have to do is from an innovation point of view, the first thing you have to do, and what leaders out there and CEOs need to recognize is, you have to think of innovation as an outcome. So innovation is nothing more than the end result of doing really amazing stuff, genuinely solving problems, really removing pain from customers, or creating a absolutely superb proposition or experience. And at the end of that, customers going, wow, that solution that company has just made, that is phenomenal. Now, here's the thing. I fly around the world teaching people about innovation. And one of my golden rules is, it doesn't matter if no one labels what you do innovative. As long as the customer goes, they can use any other word they want. As long as they go, that was amazing, that was phenomenal, best product I've ever seen. That's the end goal. And in order to get to that position, you have to start becoming really, really good at spotting problems and opportunities. And if you can do that really, really quickly, sometimes in that 90-day window, if you can spot problems and opportunities really, really quick, then you can solve them really, really quick. Because the biggest challenge is spotting the problem, not solving it.
When it comes to, now you do travel to different countries quite a lot, teaching people about innovation. What are some of the different cultural differences that cause you to have to switch up how you advise the leadership of these organizations?
Yeah, that is a really interesting. That's a really interesting question. The cultural part is one of the things that is the most interesting challenge about innovation, and I am probably more known around the world for my work on the cultural side of innovation. What you have to do is respect the different cultures and how different cultures operate. How local traditions and local behavior and local values, geographically local, play a part in how organizations interact with customers. What the differences between leadership and management in one country is different than leadership and management in another. So the hierarchy and the interplay between different layers in organizations is different. And you have to, as an advisor, you have to understand that. You can't just go in and say, here's my framework for how we lead for innovation. You have to contextualize that. And I see a lot of consultancies going in with very, very out of the box or off the shelf models and frameworks that aren't contextualized to local culture.
Yeah. Talking with a lot of people on this show and just in general in the startup ecosystem here in the Bay Area where I'm located, you always hear from different folks about how the United States is sort of when it comes to innovation, the U.S. is always sort of like, oh, that's the place where the innovation really happens more. The culture is more entrepreneurial oriented. Is that true? And are there other countries that are similar to the U.S. and which ones are particularly bad, or do you not want to say, or we just will let you? I understand.
No, look, I think you're right. I think the US does have a great track record, and it does have, it is perceived as being, more entrepreneurial. Whether that translates into innovation capability when you're then in a big complex corporate, I don't know. Some of my friends in the US may have an answer for that, but definitely, I think the startup scene and the whole Bay Area and the Valley and all of that, that has real gravitas globally. So I agree with that. But look, there are some brilliant, really entrepreneurial places around the world, but they're different. They're not like the Valley, right? Everyone's tried over the years to recreate the whole Silicon Valley thing, but yeah, look, there's lots of places around the world. I don't know that there's any bad ones. There's just some that aren't as good as the others, right?
Yeah. Well, tell us about a time when you faced a skeptical board that was doing things a certain way. They had their proven strategy type of thing, and it was actually messing them up down the road, messing their future up. How did you turn that type of situation around? When you go into any situation like that, what are some of the key things that you do, just so that the entrepreneurs out there can kind of take some of that and run with it as well?
Yeah. So the biggest challenge with innovation is, innovation as a thing, as a pursuit, i.e., we want to create better things. We have problems to solve. All of those. That's nothing new. That's been around since companies were started. The challenge with innovation, as I experience it now, and a lot of other people in my line of work will, is there's been a lot of snake oil and there's been a lot of poor advice on the innovation consulting side. What you now have is lots of organizations that are suffering from really poor advice, and it's created what I call the organizational cry wolf. I'll go into an organization, I'll be brought in, and they'll say, Chris, we've tried innovation now 2 or 3 times over the past 5, 6, 7 years. This is sort of our last chance, because culturally, if we announce innovation, we talk about it again and it doesn't work, we've lost everyone. And I see that so often now that organizations have said, look, we launched a lab, that didn't work. I mean, typically most organizations launch innovation labs without the right strategy. So it's not the labs that an innovation lab per se doesn't work. It's when you launch them with the wrong strategy that is the reason for failure. But so many companies I'm seeing have tried to innovate and not been able to pull it off, and now they're reluctant to try it again. So the scenario that you outline, how do I convince a board that they should do this, is a very, very real one. The core thing for me is they will have been given my name when they, if I'm brought in and I still have to convince them, then they've phoned the wrong person.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a red flag. Well, so, when you do come into a company, you're brought in to help transform company cultures, and the innovation, the way they think about innovation. What are some of the first key things that you look at and you see it and you're like, uh-oh, these are red flags, like you were just describing?
Yeah.
What are some other things that need to be changed?
So the absolute, chronologically, the absolute first thing we have to do in an organization is define it. So what do we mean? When I go in and I sit with the board and they say, right, we've brought you in, we need to drive innovation, yada, yada, yada. The first thing I'll say is, right, tell me what innovation is inside this organization right now. Give me the definition.
Yeah.
And in many cases, it's a rhetorical question because there won't be a definition. The first piece of work we'll do is we'll define what innovation means inside that organization, because you can't build strategy, you can't change culture, you can't put any type of process or governance or structure in place if we can't agree on what the word means. So the big red flag is when there's already a strategy, there's an innovation lab, there's an innovation team, and no one can say, yeah, Chris, here it is. This is how we define innovation.
All right,
That's the number one red flag. And it's the first piece of work that we'll do.
Yeah, so that's the number one red flag. What are a couple of other things that typically, I mean, obviously it varies per organization, different cultures, et cetera, but what are some of the other key things that tend to need work after that or around that time?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple. I'll give you sort of a macro one and then a really micro, sort of granular one. The big thing then is no strategy for innovation. And what I mean by that is innovation in their strategy, but no innovation strategy. So, look, innovation has become a marketing department's dream, right? We can throw it into documents, we pepper it through annual reports, we can add it into corporate strap lines, but almost all of that tends to be what we now refer to as innovation theatre. Where's the substance and where's the ROI? Where's the measurable benefit and outcome from all of that work? So the first thing is a really well-defined innovation strategy with clear expectations from the board and the CEO and the executive team. What do we want from innovation? When do we want it? And most importantly, what are we prepared to spend to get it? The financial conversation is really important because innovation as a capability and part of culture can help organizations completely transcend where they are today. But it's not free. It takes time, it takes resources, and it takes money. You have to invest. So strategy with clear goals and a clear path for what the organization is going to invest in innovation, with a view that if it invests $1 million, it's going to get 1.5 or $2 million back, or, those are the goals. And then one of the other big challenges is, and this is becoming really, really acute now, is organizations not giving their people time to work at driving innovation. So we've got a strategy, we've got problems, we're going to assemble teams, we want this to be solved, but you're going to have to find the time to do it. So the other big challenge is getting senior teams, especially with HR departments, to carve out, if you want those 3 people over there solving that problem, you have to give them time. And that means you've got to backfill headcount, you've got to increase resources to allow them a day a week or 2 days or 3 days a month, whatever it is, but you have to give them dedicated time. That's one of the biggest challenges that organizations face.
AI is transforming how these companies are innovating nowadays, and how all of us are innovating, really. What are some strategies? How should leaders adapt to the AI, bringing in, how does AI affect their innovation strategies going forward? Talk to us about AI. I always have to ask something about AI with.
No, and it's a great question, and it's really timely because that question is on everyone's lips, right? The reality about AI is AI will help us process data, it will help provide insight, it will help uncover problems and uncover opportunities. But in terms of innovation, unless it's pure R&D, right, where you can go, let's put this algorithm or let's add these chemicals into this AI algorithm and get it to see if it can come up with new concoctions and things like that. It's going to do things like that faster than humans. But when it actually comes to innovation, not R&D, AI still can't do what human beings can do. AI still can't observe customers and how they interact with something. AI can't go and talk to people and interview them with real empathy to really understand why they're suffering a certain problem or why a certain situation manifests in a certain way. And AI can't be creative like humans can. So AI can't see something and go, I've just seen that person do this, and then they lifted it to there and they hung it on that hook there. Well, actually, if we just move that problem goes away. AI can't do that. And that element of creativity and empathy and observation is critical to innovation. And that's the part that humans still have to play.
All right. Well, that's good news for us humans, at
Yeah.
least for a few more years here.
The matrix will not take over yet.
Not yet.
Not
Not
yet.
yet. All right. So let's talk about continuing on the innovation. You know, a lot of these innovation strategies don't last very long. Maybe they don't make it a year. Maybe they don't make it 18 months. Maybe they don't even make it a month, whatever the issue is. But how
Yeah.
do you help, uh, make it last 5 years? How do you how do you create an innovation culture that lasts, I would say, hopefully the entrepreneurs watching can get a little, an idea on how to do it.
Yeah. So the key word that you've said there is culture. You have to embed the behaviors and the mindset and the capability into culture. And the reality is, where most organizations go wrong is they try and create this utopian, a version of their organizational culture that they think is going to tick all the boxes. The reality is, when it comes to innovation, you have to understand the specific behaviors and actions and mindset that innovation requires, and shape culture around reinforcing those behaviors and making those behaviors part of the day-to-day. So embedding the behavior that innovation requires is really critical. That's how you start to scale and embed innovation as a potential outcome across an organization. The other key thing, going back to your original bit about strategy, is you also have to recognize that the world is changing continuously. Therefore, anyone building a multi-year innovation strategy is already on a losing path. So in the innovation world, we talk about building an innovation thesis, like venture capitalists have investment thesis. And that thesis will say, here's where we want to explore, here's what we want to try and solve at the moment. These are the problems we're interested in. But similarly, here are the problems we're not interested in at the moment. And you've got to continuously review that strategic document, because the world might change, something might shift, something might move from your antithesis to your thesis. So something might not be relevant today, but in 6 months it might be. So the key thing is not fixing a strategy from an innovation point of view from multi-years, but keeping that strategy fluid, reacting to the market and constantly changing depending on what's happening in the world and what the market tells you.
Yeah. Well, okay. So CEO out there right now who knows they need to innovate, what would you tell them? What's sort of the biggest one piece of advice that you would typically tell a CEO who knows they need to innovate, but doesn't know where to start right now?
Okay. The biggest thing to start to think about is think of innovation as a capability you need to build, not a thing in itself. So as I said right at the start, innovation is an outcome of lots and lots and lots of things that come together. The right strategy, the right processes and tools, the right leadership, the right culture, the right level of investment, a repeatable process, all of those ingredients. It's what we refer to as the innovation system. So strategy, processes, management and governance, culture and leadership. What CEOs need to do is recognize that all of those 5 components need to be built at an equal level of maturity. And what I mean by that is there's no point having a phenomenal strategy in a really, really toxic culture. There's no point having brilliant leadership, but no tools and processes. The mechanics of innovation dictate that there are certain things that are non-negotiable. They have to be in place. And my advice is start to think with your executive team how you can put those things in place. Clear strategy, the right tools and processes, the right type of governance, the right leadership visibility, and then the right behaviors starting to permeate through culture. The biggest place where that happens is in the middle of organizations. So if you're a CEO listening to this, your absolute key for driving innovation is what I call middle out. Innovation, the false narratives are, is innovation top down or is it bottom up? Is it, driven and dictated by leadership, or is it grassroots and does it come up from the bottom of the organization? The reality in my experience of having done this for 20 years now and written books on how to build innovation-led cultures, is you build a culture of innovation from the middle out. Middle managers are the absolute key driving force for driving growth through innovation and embedding innovation capability into culture.
It makes me just want to ask, what would be a good example of a way that a middle manager, doing the middle out thing, give us, if you can, an example of where this innovation sort of, how it takes effect in the middle manager situation and how it can spread out.
Yeah. So look, consider where the most of the output of an organization is. So leaders should be strategy, looking at the future, making sure that the ship is sailing in the right direction. On a day-to-day basis, the output of an organization, whether that's building cars, whether it's manufacturing pharmaceuticals, whatever it is, happens and is managed in the middle of an organization by that middle management layer. They're corporately bilingual, so they have relationships upwards. They can translate strategy into day-to-day action and behavior. And they can also inspire and empower the rest of the workforce to do the stuff that needs to be done. And what you see in most organizations is executive teams pushing the drive for innovation down into the middle. And their ask is that the middle of the organization drives innovation and delivers it on a day-to-day basis. The challenge is most middle managers are asked to drive innovation and drive growth and solve problems, but they're asked to do it inside a system that isn't built for innovation. And that's why your last ask about what do CEOs need to do, they need to figure out what the system is that will allow for innovation and enable middle managers to work within that system.
Got it. For executives who want to work with you, you work with companies all over the world as an innovation advisor. And, so if any executive out there who wants to work with you, what's like the big qualification that you look for that determines whether or not you want to work with them? And then we'll probably get into, and then we'll have to wrap it up, and I'll just try and find out how people can get a hold of you, basically.
So the qualification is they have to recognize at that board level that innovation is of strategic importance, and they have to be prepared. I have a phrase: leaders want what innovation delivers, but they're rarely prepared to do what it takes. So what I'll do with an executive team is I will lay out what innovation is actually going to take, what it actually looks like on a day-to-day basis inside an organization. And if they're then prepared, if they say, it's fine, Chris, we're up for it, we need to do this, if that's what it takes, then that's what we need to do. Then we'll work together. And it's a fair question from your point, because a lot of the time when I outline that with clients, the appetite isn't actually there. And that's fine. It means they're not ready for it, and that's absolutely fine. But the qualification for me as a senior team saying, okay, we get it. We know it's not rocket science, but it's damn hard work, but we know we need to do it.
Yeah. And hey, if it doesn't work out, then you move on to the next, and you hopefully find someone for whom it's a good fit. So how do the folks out there find you? What's the best ways that they can find you, Chris?
I'm super visible on LinkedIn, or the easiest way is chrisbeswick.com. There's no H in my name, though. That tends to trip people up. So CrisBeswick.com, website, LinkedIn. Yeah, super easy to find.
Bringing innovation to all of the company leaders out there. It's great to have you on the show on From the Ground Up, and hope to have you again at some point soon, someday.
That'd be a pleasure.
All right, Chris. Thank you. Take care.